If training isn't actually solving a business problem, actually changing behavior, then you condition people to believe that training doesn't do anything, that training is only a check the box exercise. Hello and welcome to the Leadership Launchpad. My name is Matt Jertson, the founder of Better Everyday Studios, and we are doing this month's solo episode a week early because we have a very special guest coming on next week. I don't want to say who it is, but you definitely don't want to miss it. I'm really excited for the conversation. So today, I want to talk about something that I'm going to be talking about a lot next month as well. I just got back from DevLearn, which is this big industry conference for the talent and development space. And while I was there, I set up short conversations with about 8 different learning leaders. These are people who are the heads of learning at giant organizations, some of the largest organizations on the planet, or they're consultants, they're in AI consultants, they're change management consultants, they're all kinds of things. And I asked them one simple question. I wanted to bring all of these people in together to ask one simple question. And I asked them this: what is one thing you wish more managers knew about training? These conversations generally are for managers. And so I wanted to take a minute because I don't think many managers spend a lot of time thinking about training. Obviously, it's kind of this side thing. And so I wanted to ask these folks what they wished that managers knew. And it was interesting. A lot of the conversations followed a very similar trajectory. And I don't want to go into that now, but I do want to kind of set a preparation for those discussions that'll be coming out next month. Because when I was head of training and development at SpaceX, and every training and development leader that I know, they always face the same problem. And that problem is that people come to them, whether that be executive leaders, managers, individual contributors, and they say this. They say, Matt, we have a problem. We need some training. We need training to fix it. And I would calmly say, great, let's talk about it. More often than not, training couldn't really do anything to fix their problem. I knew what they wanted. I knew the project, the scope, it all made sense. But I knew training wasn't going to have an impact. In fact, I remember a good friend of mine who is the head of learning and culture inside the Virgin Group. He told me once that he found it really strange that when he became head of learning, his number one job became convincing people that learning isn't the answer. And I think what I want to do today is I want to kind of walk through, during my time at SpaceX, the series of questions that I developed to ask managers, and that I would suggest every manager ask themselves every time you think you have a training problem. Just take a minute to kind of go through these series of questions, and I guarantee you it's going to help make sure you're truly dealing with a training problem, or if it's not a training problem, it's going to tell you where to focus your efforts. Before we get to that, I do want to spend a minute talking about why this is so important, because often training is seen as a quick fix. There's some group of people that aren't doing something wrong, something right. There's a finding from an audit where they say, oh, your people don't know this thing, or oh, you're missing this out. And training feels like a quick box you can check. You create a PowerPoint deck, you give a live presentation, you create an e-learning, you push it out to the audience, they take the training, you have all the boxes checked, you go to the auditor and you say, hey, see, look, we're in compliance now. That's not how you want to use training. I get sometimes it's necessary, right? Audits are important. And I get that sometimes we need to focus all of our efforts on passing those audits and having clean records. And training can do that. But if you only treat it that way, a couple of other bad things happen. One, you make training meaningless. Right? If training isn't actually solving a business problem, actually changing behavior, then you condition people to believe that training doesn't do anything, that training is only a check the box exercise. And that's never good. Also, training isn't free, right? It takes time and effort to create, especially if you're using an outside agency. It takes time of your employees away from them doing the actual work. And all of that is incredibly expensive. And so between the fact that you make training seem more meaningless, you waste a lot of time and energy, you want to make sure that when you do use training, that it is actually going to have some kind of business impact. And so I think most consultants that are out there, most training leaders that are out there would say the first thing you need to do when you think you have a training problem is identify the business impact. What's the business metric that you want to change? And that's really important. But I do find that sometimes that can be a little hard to really grapple with, especially if you're, a frontline manager. You might not quite know or be able to clearly distill the big picture change or even the specific business change that you want to have. You just know you have a problem. And so instead, what I recommend is walking through a few simple questions to kind of reflect on your situation to make sure that training is actually going to help solve your problem. The very first question that I think is really, really important, and I'm sure will resonate with everybody, is when you think you have a problem, is more than one person having this problem? We've all been in trainings, whether it's, financial trainings, health and safety trainings that ultimately came about because there was one person in the company that was misusing their company travel card, or there's one person in the company that ran the forklift into a wall somewhere. Now everybody has to stop and slow down, and we all need to get this training. And that's just never really a great fix. That's kind of like using, instead of using a hammer, using a forklift, or instead of, it's not going to get you what you need. When you have one person that makes a mistake, that's really a performance management issue. And so rather than running off and saying, because we had this problem, we need training, you should just deal face to face with that specific individual. And so that's the first question. Is more than one person or more than one or two people having a problem? If it's a group problem, okay, great. Now we can move on. If one or two people are having a problem, performance manage those people. If it's bigger than that, let's move on to the next step. Second question, whatever thing is going wrong, it's probably some process that isn't happening correctly. Is the process properly documented? This is a huge issue, especially in startups. I know we're all moving super quickly. We all want to get ahead, and we're kind of figuring things out on the fly. We always say, we're kind of like building the car while we're driving it down the freeway. And so documentation tends to be one of the first things that we don't do. And that's bad. We need to get away from that. We need to figure out a way to focus on that documentation, especially for training. And when I'm making training, often training is done or asked for in lieu of documentation, because the subject matter expert, the manager, they want to make documentation like the source material, and that's never a good idea. They want to make training the source material, and that's never a good idea. Training should always be based on some other documentation that is the actual source material. And so if you see a process going wrong, if you see people on your team doing something wrong, you need to ask the question, is this thing that I want them to do properly documented in the way that they can access, that they understand, that they can follow? Because if it's not properly documented, then that's what you need to solve. It's not a training problem, it's a documentation problem. Third question, let's assume the documentation is correctly. Third problem that I would often see, especially again in startups, is to ask yourself, do the employees have the resources to follow the documentation properly? Right? Do they have the time? Do they have the tools? Do they have any other resources that they need? Very often there will be documentation that will be put together by one team, and they are divorced from the team that's actually applying it. And so they forget they don't actually have that tool, or maybe that tool was on order, but something went wrong. And so now they don't have it. And now people are having to just think, come up with things on the fly. And that's what's causing problems. So don't just make sure the process is documented, make sure that the people have everything that they need in order to follow that documentation properly. Let's assume it's it's lots of people are having this problem. The process is documented properly. They have the resources they need to follow that documentation. Fourth question I want you to ask, and this is the final one, is whether or not people are getting feedback. Do they even know that they are doing something wrong? again, in complex organizations, in like assembly lines, there might be a situation where, a part of a product is made in one place, it's then shipped over to another team, and they're the ones that are like, oh my gosh, something's going wrong here. It might just be that there's no feedback loop. The original team that's making the mistake, they're following the process, they're doing everything, and they think everything's fine, and it's not flowing down to them, right? It's the fact that there's a mistake isn't flowing back to them, and so they don't even know that anything is wrong. If there isn't some kind of feedback loop, you need to put that feedback loop in place so that they know something's going wrong, and then it might just fix itself. Like whatever the problem is, once they get the feedback, they might snap, it might be a simple way to snap your fingers and make things go correctly. And so you see all these questions. Are multiple people having a problem? Is the process properly documented? Do the people have the resources they need to follow the process as documented? Are they getting feedback? These are all indicators that training isn't going to solve your problem. You need to go solve those problems first before you think to use training to fix the problem. One thing I will note about all this that you might have noticed, training might still be the solution to the problem. It's just going to be a different kind of training, right? Maybe managers are really bad at performance management. And so we need performance management training for those managers. And that's going to solve the first problem. Or maybe we don't have a standard way to write documentation. And so that's why people are having problems reading it. And now we need to train the technical writers on the proper way, or maybe it's the engineers or whoever it is writing the documentation, how to write documentation. Training might still be the thing, but it's going to be a different problem. It's going to be the solution to a different problem. It's still not going to be the solution to the original problem that you had. As a manager, being able to walk yourself through these 4 questions is essential. It's going to save you a lot of time because one, it's going to help you really identify where the root of the problem is so that you can go fix it as fast as possible. But it's also just simply going to make sure that you're not wasting everybody's time. Using training purely as a check the box exercise doesn't ever deal with the root of the problem, which is some kind of business issue or performance issue that needs to be changed. Changing that is hard. Changing that takes effort. And so if we want to have training that's really meaningful, then we need to give it enough energy in order to make sure it actually sticks and works. But that means we need to stop doing as many check the box exercises. So just like I said, has happened with a lot of my friends and happened to me. I think most learning teams spend a lot of times doing training that they know in their hearts is going to be ineffectual. They're doing it because they feel like they're an order taker. The business comes to them and says, hey, we need this. And then the business is mad when it doesn't make a difference. And truth be told, a lot of learning teams may not have the knowledge necessary to ask these kinds of questions. So if you are a manager, then I highly recommend you walk yourself through these steps. You start off by making sure, 1, is this a problem that is affecting a large number of people? 2, is the process that I want them to follow properly documented? 3, do they have the resources they need to follow that process? And 4, are they getting feedback when something goes wrong with the process? If you do those 4 things, 1, you will be able to quickly identify where the root of the problem is. But 2, you're going to make sure that when you do use training, it is for a point and a purpose, and that is to actually change the behavior of the members on your team. I hope you found this quick little conversation helpful. Like I said, in December, we're gonna have a whole bunch of mini discussions kind of around this topic from different angles. So I think it's gonna be really interesting. There was some great discussion that happened, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Leadership Launchpad. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you are looking for help turning your organization's great engineers into great managers, me and my team at Better Everyday Studios would love to help. We deliver targeted and interactive training workshops that are designed to help build the 3 fundamental skills of any new manager: building trust, giving feedback, and setting goals. Reach out to me through matt@bettereverydaystudios.com so we can start making your organization better every day.